Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. In this episode, Josh shares his heart-wrenching journey from a childhood impacted by abuse and perfectionism to the depths that alcohol took him. Throughout the years of struggling, Josh had a DUI, rehab stays, but never wanted to make the changes for himself. He recounts hitting rock bottom with a near-death experience in Italy, which became the catalyst for his transformation. Through resilience, therapy, and unconditional love from his family, Josh finds his way back to himself, embracing sobriety and self-love. Josh's powerful story is an example that life can turn around, and although sobriety is not easy, it is worth it. And this is Josh's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Welcome back. Good to have you for another episode. The Spotify Wrapped just came out, which shows sort of a broad picture of how people are listening to the podcast. One thing that stood out to me was listening time. 5.7 million minutes of listening in the last year, which is crazy. So thank you everybody who listens to the podcast on Spotify. I want to mention too, with the holidays coming up, whether we stay sober or not through the holidays, I think has a big thing to do with how we get prepared for them and how much support we have and where we're at in our journey. So as always, I'm mentioning the Sober Motivation community, the 30-day free trial. If you join today, that would carry you through free. You can cancel anytime. We have over 15 meetings a week. We have a men's meeting, a women's meeting, and we have probably now 10 hosts that host meetings. I host 3 in the app myself, and it's an extremely supportive community. And there's a variety of people. Some people are on their first day. Some people are trying to gain some traction. And some people have multiple years of sobriety that have been part of this community since their day one. So this is your invite to come and check out the Sober Motivation community, jump in on some meetings, connect with some people, meet some people. You really never know where all of this can go. A little while back, we had the big meetup for the community in Toronto, and it was just full circle moment, just how incredible it is to know these people for a couple of years virtually in the squares on Zoom and then connect in real life. And it feels like we've known each other forever. The first time we meet, everybody was just so incredible. So it's a beautiful community, and it could be something there for you to help support you. It's not judgmental. It's not about you getting everything right or people telling you what to do or anything like that. I promise you there's somebody in there who shares the same story as you, even if maybe you feel yours is extremely unique. Like, there's going to be things that cross over and people to talk to and strategies to pick up. It's getting out of the willpowering way of doing sobriety. Like, it's getting out of that. It's learning the tools. It's connecting with others. It's building our skills. And ultimately, that is the most beautiful way to do all of this. I think so anyway, and that's what the experience of a lot of the members are. So I also want to mention too, if you do listen on Spotify, be sure to give a 5-star rating. And I just want to say thank you for everybody tuning into the show and supporting it over this year, sharing it with your friends and people you might go to groups with or whoever it is. And to all the guests that have really put it all out there for the world to hear your stories in hopes to inspire the next person to either get started or keep going. It's so cool. It is so cool to have everybody that's willing to do that. It's a beautiful, another full circle moment too, as we head toward the end of this year. I also want to mention too, there's 3 episodes up on the Just Between Us podcast. I mentioned it before. It's more of an intimate experience, more of my story and sharing how I got to where I am today. The next episode I'm really excited about. I'm going to share a little bit about my rehab experience. I went to rehab the first time when I was 17 and I went for 12 months. I had no idea rehabs even existed. I had no idea that I needed a rehab, and it's a wild story, but my parents hired private security company to bring me. I was in the hospital, psych ward, UNC Chapel Hill, and they hired this private security company to transport me to this rehab just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. And I had no idea anything like this existed. So it's a long story, but check out the Just Between Us Sober Motivation podcast. I'll drop the link below. You can't find this. It's not searchable on podcasting apps. It's a private podcast. I'll drop the link below that has all the information for it. And yeah, would love for you guys to check it out. Now, let's get to this episode with Josh. This was incredible to connect with Josh, how far he's come in his journey in healing and sobriety was just beautiful. And I didn't know really anything about Josh's story before we jumped on this podcast. Let's get right to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Josh with us. Josh, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad we were able to connect and you be interested in sharing your story here on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a great platform, and part of my journey is just talking more about it, and hopefully it impacts some people, and maybe changes some courses.
Yeah, 100%. So what was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I had the nuclear family, sibling, pets. My parents are still married. They did the best they could with what they had, to be honest with you. It was a pretty rough upbringing. I was molested when I was young, 3 through about 8 or 9. So was dealing with that, but trying to share that guilt and that fear and that victimization with my parents in my early teens was hard. And that sat with me for a long time. Really, I honestly thought I had dealt with it, thought I'd addressed it, but it wasn't until, this part of the journey, they're kind of tied. My sober process and getting to that point of sobriety is connected with dealing with that childhood trauma, among other things. But the childhood, in looking back in it, if you were to remove that relatively good childhood, I try not to complain about it. I love my parents to death.
Yeah, and getting to that place too of it, maybe it was always that way for you, maybe not. Only guessing here on my end of they did the best they could with what they knew. I think that
Yeah,
that really shows. I think for myself a big deal of growth in the healing process of all of that. Right? Like I mean, I'm a parent now, and yeah, it's
right.
tough.
Right. Yeah, I'm a parent with 3 kids, and 20, 18, and 11. So spreading them out changes your perspective. And I want to have a great relationship. And I do have a great relationship with my parents, but I did want my internal process of dealing with my own trauma and my own journey to sour my relationship with them as they got older and I got older and my children grew up with them. So it was really important for me to deal with it, to provide, that grace and forgiveness so that we still have a positive relationship.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing all of that as
Yeah, for sure.
the early childhood days. Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Atlanta for the most part, a little bit in upstate New York, but my childhood was primarily in Atlanta and great. I loved it. Went to college in Vermont, lived in New York City for a while. So kind of been all over. Now I'm in Florida. But, during those journeys, just to tie it into the sobriety, I got to college and I didn't drink my freshman year. I wasn't raised old. My grandfather was an alcoholic, so my dad's reaction was to swing the pendulum to the other side, and grew up, in a very controlling, kind of perfectionist-driven environment. So when I got to college, I really wanted to have that control, and over time, I started drinking more and more, and then it escalated.
Yeah. So when you grew up, there wasn't like much drinking around, or wasn't like
No,
problematic in a sense. No, interesting.
no, neither my mom or dad drank. And, my relationship with my grandfather was really removed. He was in Vermont. I was in Atlanta. So wasn't around it. So my interpretation of what alcohol and a relationship with it looked like was through my father and my mom.
Yeah. So that's kind of what was passed down to you in those initial
Yeah.
years up until anyway college. There. How did high school go for you? I mean, you mentioned kind of the perfectionism too. A lot of people. This comes up a lot on the podcast.
Yeah.
This sort of
Yeah.
idea of getting everything right, which is
Right.
feels like a lot of pressure. I mean, did that impact you? You
Well,
did well in school then?
I did really, really well in school, but in this journey, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, some OCD in there, depression, all clinically diagnosed. And a lot of what happened to me in my childhood, even through my teen years, was a compounding effect of not only my own biology, but my mom particularly was very much a perfectionist, and my dad had very high standards, and those two things combined with kind of my own chemical makeup led to a ton of pressure that I still deal with today. I still go to therapy. I still talk about these things to create better coping mechanisms than a lot of the things that I built to protect myself over the years. And alcohol became a crux for that over time. Was a way of turning my brain off, shutting down the OCD, escaping the ADHD, avoiding that perfectionist voice in my head kind of thing.
Yeah. Did the ADHD stuff come up like in high school for you? Or you mentioned too, is that like now like kind of part of your life today?
Yeah. Yeah, much later
No.
in life. There wasn't a lot of that kind of care around me growing up. It was you just this is who you are. You do the best you can, and usually that's not good enough. So you got to try harder, and that's kind of the mentality that I was raised with. That it was just you never good enough.
Yeah. Which I mean, I think our parents, would like to guess, that they want what's best for us, right? And kind of what's best is like do well in school and get a good education, and then
Yeah,
dreams will come true. But it's maybe in that entire process too that we pick up. I really connected with what you said, sort of the armor we put on, or what we
right.
do to survive and how we survive. And then I notice people as they kind of go through life and go through this journey is the big part in sobriety. I mean, skipping way ahead here, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but a big part of the sobriety is really identifying what are the things that helped us survive that are no longer serving us anymore and might be keeping us stuck, like lack of vulnerability or trusting others or the grace that you've mentioned too. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as I evolved, I just became more and more empty because nothing was good enough. Nothing satiated me. Right, I was always hungry for more, so I was constantly chasing. And as you mature and you evolve, your wants and needs change. It became career, it became money, it became things. And as I acquired all of this, none of it really satisfied me, and drinking was there as kind of my only companion that I could find solace in. And it never, those two things didn't mix well, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Of not feeling worthy enough, or never feeling like you got there, and then drinking comes in. I mean, how does that kind of start too, right? Because you have all this history you shared with us, right, in the
Yeah.
family, and then your experience growing up, and then not drinking your freshman year. How does alcohol come into your life, and you kind of switch
Yeah.
on sort of how you maybe felt or viewed things?
Yeah, it was a slippery slope. It started as one or two. And then over time, even without acknowledging it to myself, only in hindsight can I recognize this. I was self diagnosing, and I was drinking to kind of, quell the demons and escape. And it just became more and more, and everything became escalated. So the more I chased and the less things were rewarding me and giving me those dopamine hits, the more I drank. And that led me on a path up until about 2 years ago, where the 3 or 4 years prior to that, my life was really falling apart. I was having to drink to be functional. So I was waking up in the drinking. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. If I had a headache at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, waking up, I'd sneak out of the bedroom and I'd drink, and got to a point where I was hiding it from my family completely. And if you want me to talk about that now, I can.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested too, sort of in the kind of story to how you ended up there, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, there's a lot of people. It's so interesting, right? A lot of people in these are kind of how the stories go in a sense, right? There's always kind of that, maybe that quote unquote sweet spot to where it's not overly problematic. You don't have a vision or don't think it ever could get any
Right.
worse. And then there's a lot of people who I find kind of live in that maybe gray area of things aren't
Yes.
that bad, so maybe I won't do anything about it now. But it's also interesting because it's like, well, if you're already headed that way, how many other areas in life do we wait until things get really that bad? Like if we have a flat tire, we don't drive on
Right.
it for the next 3 years thinking, I'll just look after it another day. So I am really curious on how things kind of ramp up, and maybe it's justification, maybe it's denial, maybe it's just this is what's working for you. Like really interested in sort of that story, because if anybody's kind of in that
Yep.
spot of like on the
Yep.
fence of like, hey, maybe I'm headed this way, maybe I'm not. Like, what was your experience kind of in that middle ground?
Yeah, I would say I think I avoided that self reflection. I would have the typical, oh, I should stop conversations. And I did throughout my journey. I've been to rehab 3 times. The first time was like a virtual rehab, didn't make any sense, didn't last long. And then, but had that conversation. I got to stop. I, was engaging for a period of time, 2, 3 months. I was sober. And then I wasn't ready. I hadn't surrendered myself to stopping. I was still resisting. I was still thinking I could manage it, that I was in control, that I had power. Eventually did inpatient for 4 days, was supposed to be 10. But, 95% of that population at that rehab facility were going to jail essentially after they had passed through. I didn't really connect with them. They were all narcotic users, and the community there was not healthy. So I went to the doctor and conned my way essentially out of rehab, and was able to stay sober for a period of time. And none of these things woke me up. None of these moments. And then it continued to escalate where I stopped. There was a point in time when the rehabs kicked in where I wasn't drinking around anyone. It became hidden. It became secret. It blew up my marriage, my relationships with my kids. It became something that I had to do every day to physically feel better. And it reached a point where I was picking my daughter up from a camp, and got in a car accident. I had been drinking. It was a DUI. I flipped my vehicle with her in the passenger seat, and we walked away without a scratch, and was sober for 3 months, 4 months after that, and that still was not enough to wake me up. And to your point, though, to the question, how did it get there? It got there because I let it, and in a way, it was a weakness in me. I kind of had given up, to be honest with you, on myself. I couldn't love myself. I was never good enough for myself. I never felt satisfied with myself. And the alcohol turned all of those thoughts off for me. And it became a yin and a yang. The thing that was killing me was the thing that I needed, but I didn't want it. And that toxic relationship just continued to spiral me down and down. And I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the desire, to be frank with you, to change any of that at that moment. There was the logical side of me that was saying, oh, you should stop. But my body and my emotions and my spiritual place in that moment of time didn't bring me to a point where I could admit I had a serious enough problem that I had to go to inpatient again, that I needed to officially stop for the rest of my life. And looking back on it, I don't know what more could have happened to me up to that point to wake me up. And then more stuff did. But looking back on it, I continue to wonder, like, how did the DUI of all things with my daughter in the car not create self-reflection? And the forgiveness had to be first. I had to forgive myself. I had to deal with my past, my childhood. I had to, I went to I've been to psychiatrists, I've been to therapists. I've had to approach it really holistically to get to where I'm at and be sober for the last 2 years, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think it really paints that picture and kind of leaves us with that question of what it's going to be for each individual to make the change, right? For some people, it's a quiet conversation on a Sunday
Yep.
morning that enough is enough. And for other people, it can be intervention after intervention, event after event to get to that S word that you mentioned of surrendering, that this is always going to end up me in the same or worse situation.
Well,
Um,
exactly. After the DUI, as I mentioned, I remained sober for a few months, started drinking again. My wife went out of town, and was watching my daughter, and we were married. We're still married. It all ends happily, I hope to say. Long road, but we were fighting. She left there with my daughter. She saw me drinking. When my wife came back, I was supposed to leave for Italy, and it all blew up. My daughter shared with my wife that she had seen me drink. My wife confronted me again. I left my wedding band on the butcher's block, packed my bags, hopped on an airplane to Italy for business, and thought that was it. No more marriage. Going to lose the kids. There's no way I could keep them with my track record. And it just started. This is how bad I was. During that process of slamming my wedding band down and packing my bag, I actually went to the convenience store, drank in the parking lot of the gas station, drove back, wrapped up, took an Uber to the airport, kept drinking, landed in Italy, walked to a market, bought whiskey, got back to my hotel room, kept drinking, went to a team dinner that night, hammered, fell asleep at the table, went back to the hotel room. Woke up the next day for our big business meeting with the owners of the company, and I was hungover. I was sick as a dog, and played it off as COVID. They sent me back to the hotel, went through the COVID test, kept drinking. It got to the point where one of my employees saw my behavior in the hotel and thought I needed an intervention there, and called 911, or the equivalent of. I went to the hospital and spent the night there, fluids, the whole thing. My employers picked me up the next day, and I got a letter shortly thereafter terminating me. So here I am in Italy by myself in a hotel room, hungover, fired, thinking I'm divorced. And my only thought is, where's my next drink? And it dawned on me that I'd brought over 2 bottles of whiskey with me as gifts. And I'd completely forgotten about them in my luggage because I was drunk when I packed it. And found those, drank 1.5, broke the second bottle after popping 8 or 10 trazodone, and thought I'd be done. And that was it. And all while this was happening, my employee called my wife, and this is overlapping timeline, called my wife. She got on an airplane, flew to Italy, didn't tell me. No one told me. I was too drunk. No one was engaging with me. I was hidden in my hotel room. And she walked through the door with my employee, who happened to be a nurse, and found me dead on the floor of the bathroom, naked, blood. I'd cut myself, piss, crap myself, no pulse. And they brought me back. And that was the 22nd of September. The 23rd is my birthday. And that was the first day I'd spent sober in a long time, long time. And it clicked. I gave up and I surrendered. I surrendered to my wife. I surrendered to the process. I surrendered to whatever life had planned for me, because up to that point, I had tried to white knuckle everything and plan everything and execute everything, and none of it was good enough. And it led me to that, cold bathroom floor in Italy. And I just remember going for a walk with my wife on my birthday in Italy. We were going to fly out the next day, the 24th, and we walked that night. We spent 3-4 hours just walking. These, they were just rural streets of Italy and Pisa. And I just remember that walk was transformative for me. We didn't talk about anything important. We just spent time together, and we spent it together with me being sober. And that was the moment that I told myself that if I surrendered to the process, I'd be okay. That if I just stopped trying to control everything and let things enter my life as they do, and just roll with the punches, that I was going to be okay. And I came back, spent 30 days in an inpatient program. It's the longest I'd spent. and met a group of guys, 7 of us, and we still stay in touch. That was 2 years ago. I formed a group. We talked every Sunday for about a year. We're all parts of the world we're from, and that was part of the journey too. That community, that brotherhood. But it was just putting everything down and level setting and starting from scratch, to be honest with you, without expectations. So much of my life had expectations applied to it. Everything in my life had an expectation. How I was raised, how I performed, everything was immeasurable. And I stopped measuring. And it gave me the space and the freedom to be able to start dealing with all of these things in a more mature fashion.
Wow, Josh. Thanks for sharing that, man. How do you feel right now, sharing that of how things were and what you've been through, like right now?
That's a great question. Really good question. I feel very happy. I feel very happy that to be direct, that I just am on your show to be able to talk about it. I try to talk to people about it, and sometimes those conversations are great, and sometimes they're not because they touch too close to what that person's going through, and maybe they're not ready to receive it. But I find part of my process is being able to talk about it. So this is therapeutic in a way, but it also makes me happy because as bad and as negative as all of what I shared sounds, it's really my wife's love, my love, my kids' love, my parents' love, that it's love that has really dug me out of this. And so when I share the story, I feel that. I feel that love that got me here. I feel that support and that warmth that is given me the opportunity to be here right now.
Wow, that's beautiful, man. Love. Interesting in that, in your story there too. I mean, a lot of things to unpack there. But one thing I picked up on is you sharing that moment, that walk with your wife about it wasn't necessarily any groundbreaking conversation that you had, but it was maybe the time together and you sharing that moment, not exactly in your words, but things kind of made sense. Like the
Yeah.
stars kind of aligned maybe in that moment. What is your thought on, because I often think about my story of like, I think we all
Yeah.
have that moment to where we make this shift, right? We see clearly, whether it's a spiritual experience or whatever it is. It's like, okay, I see this for what it is in this moment now. And then maybe on this side of the journey, we're like, how didn't I see it before? How could I not have seen
Right.
it or been so blind to maybe where I was headed? And that's interesting. Do you think there's any relevance to every intervention, the time you went to the outpatient, the time you stuck around for 3 days? Do you feel like those were sort of building blocks to maybe prepare you not for, you didn't know what was coming, but maybe everything played a little role even at the time it didn't feel like it did? Or do you feel like it was just really heavy at the end there?
I think I think there is an accumulative effect, but I was in such a bad way that I would never accept internally. I would never accept that these could benefit me. I was going to inpatient and outpatient for other people. I wasn't going for myself. I was going to check a box. So I always felt like that it was a game to be played, not necessarily something to take seriously and really grow from.
Yeah. And I think that's a relatable story for so many people, as the earlier interventions of maybe it's to keep the marriage together or the kids or keep a
Yep.
job or all of that type of stuff, right? I think that like most people, I think, start there because people
They
around us
do.
recognize it before we
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. They're seeing it all happen in real time and the pain that it causes because it's not in their control and their nature. I don't care who they are, is to try and help and try and provide some organization to it. And you can't. It's got to be a personal decision. And it was that last 30 days that I did for myself. And but I had nothing at that point. I didn't have a job. I thought I was still going to get a divorce. Didn't think I was going to see my kids. There was nobody there for me outside of myself. And so I had to do it for me. And so in a way, it was very freeing to be at that place because again, it gave me the room to do what I needed to do to heal myself.
Yeah. Yeah. What, when you, like after your wife came too, I mean, that's such a, I mean,
Yeah.
that is such a story, right? To where how things had ended, and then you go to Italy, and then the employee makes the contact and they show up. I mean, the timing,
Had it been,
seems right.
yeah, I mean, had it been minutes later, we wouldn't be on the podcast together. There's something very serendipitous about it. I've had people ask me, did I see anything or did I have an experience or whatnot? I didn't. I wish I did in a way. Maybe it makes the story more relatable or more believable to myself if I had seen something or had this kind of journey. But I didn't. I just came to and I saw my wife, and that's the angel.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you kind of make this commitment too to go to this program for 30 days and have a different maybe mindset or, belief in yourself to do something. At this point you have to do something different. And it's so interesting too about kind of even circling way back of the armor that we carry and the things that help us survive and the things that help us keep going. And at this point, when you enter this treatment program, now my guess is that now you have to be vulnerable and you have to share what's really going on. You have to let other people in, and all of that stuff is kind of maybe things that you haven't really plugged into, right? About it, sort of admitting, right? I can't do this on my own. I need support. I need
Right?
help. And this is all of the stuff I've been just stuffing down for all of these years.
Yeah. No, that's you hit the nail on the head. And there was a part of fake it till you make it at the beginning too. I took the amount of love that my wife has for me, and in that moment, hopping on the airplane, scared to death, seeing me pale cold on a bathroom floor, and still and being there to save me. I, if she can love me that much, then I have to be able to love myself. And I didn't believe that, but I kept telling myself that. And I had to just fake it till I made it. I had to keep telling myself that I'm worthy of love, that I'm a good person, that I am enough, and and that if she believed all those things about me, even when I didn't, that there was hope, that there was something in there that I could find for myself, and I was able to.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Fake it till you make it. It's interesting because some people have a different perspective, but I always say you'll only understand it when you're in a situation where you have to fake it till
Yeah,
you make it, where you have to convince yourself to stick around long enough for sort of the magic or for something else to click.
yeah. I think you have to do the hard work. That's the big part of it for me, is that I was avoiding doing the hard work for a long, long time.
Mm.
And it's been the last 2 years that I've just committed myself to doing the hard work. And it's not easy. It's just not, but it's worth it. The rewards that I've received from my own personal validation, from my own personal relationships, and love for those around me have rewarded me in such a way where no matter how hard it is, it's worth it. And that's what I've seen and I saw while I was on this journey, was the reluctance to surrender yourself to do the hard work. You got to suck it up, and just commit yourself to you kind of put it, just stick with it long enough, because it will break in your direction. You have to be willing to put in the work to get there.
Yeah. And that's the, big part people talk about too is like the work and, everything you have to do. I'm really curious too how you begin to, after you, make this decision to get sober, which is an incredible one, but ultimately the first step to everything
Yeah.
else that kind of comes next. How do you begin to repair these relationships? I mean, with your wife and kids and, yourself too.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to come from a position of humbleness, to be honest. I had to just I had to show them that I could live around them before they let me back in. And over time, I was able to show that I was on the right track, that I could live around them, that I could start rebuilding some security in that relationship. But ultimately, they had to reach a point where they could forgive me. And that was their journey. And that's not something that I could push on, I could ask for. They had to come to terms with it on their own. So it relates back to the hard work. People think hard work is going to a party and being around alcohol and not drinking or having a craving. And for me, the hard work are the relationships and getting back to a position of safety and security with those that I love. And the hard work is recognizing that you can't control that. The hard work is sitting back and taking a passive role in these other journeys that you're dangling on the outcome. You want to be let back in. You want the forgiveness and the love, but you can't force that. They have to come to terms with it. So for me, patience and being humble and being present and showing through action that I was still in there, that the dad they knew, the husband that they married, the son that they had was still in there. And if given enough time and space, can find himself again.
Yeah, that is it. I mean, that kind of leans into, ultimately what can we control in life?
Right.
Like, but I think with the drinking cycle that can be an element of us trying to control how we
It,
feel and so many different areas of life that it's completely exhausting. Going back a little bit, because I kind of skipped over this and I'm just
that's
hearing
okay.
kind of where you're at now. Where was like the turning point, you would say? I mean, when you first started drinking, did you identify problematic right away, or when was like the turning point that sort of maybe set you on this, or was it just ultimately a slow burn?
I think it was a slow burn until COVID. And we had moved from Atlanta to Florida about 10 years ago. Florida is a very different lifestyle than Atlanta, much more permissive. Alcohol is everywhere. And, I thought it was everywhere in Atlanta, but not like in Florida. And combined with my environment, my lifestyle, and then you have COVID where there was a ton of day drinking for me. And then once I started day drinking, then it became earlier and earlier, later and later, all day. And it became something I had to have to function. And so there wasn't like a big moment, but I would say that COVID absolutely accelerated things.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that too. That is a common thing for COVID. A lot of people share on the
Mhm.
podcast too, right? I mean, the lack of supervision. You have to go into work. Nobody's smelling
Mhm.
it. A lot more free time, less community, less connection. And some people, I think, I don't know. I think it could go kind of two ways. If people are like, "Hey, it sped things up, and I kind of got to sobriety maybe sooner than I would have," or it sped things up and it was quite disastrous and it was difficult. You had shared another thing too. I picked up on earlier with reaching that level of acceptance, right? Of like, this is my life. And I've just kind of come to that acceptance of that. This is how it is. Right. And I pick up on that from a lot of people who struggle of like, there's kind of three stages, right? Where you pick up on, you have a problem and then you kind of slide into maybe that, this is how it is. This is how it's always going to be. And now I just have to do my best sort of in this space, which I think is, a very tough spot to be in. And as you go, and that's why I mentioned to a lot of people too, if, maybe they're earlier in their story, right? And they're drinking and it's a little bit problematic and they have some things that are happening that are not good, some consequences. I think the longer we keep drinking around, and it's not going to be the case for everybody, but we open ourselves up to one thing happening, right? For you, it was COVID. For a lot of people, it was COVID. I don't know what the
Yep.
future is going to hold for you, for me, for anybody. I don't have a crystal ball. But I think the longer we keep drinking around and it's sort of checking this box for us of escape from life, all it really takes is one event that's traumatic or one
Yeah.
event that we're not prepared for And things
Mm.
can just change like the snap of a fingers, right? We lean in more. We lean in more because that's what's working for us. That's always mentioned to people, like, no matter where you're at on the spectrum, it could change on a dime. Nobody wakes up one day that I know of and says, okay, I really want to be dependent on alcohol and really
Right.
want to go through withdrawals if I don't have it. I've never heard anybody share that before.
Right. No, no. And I think you're spot on that it's a fine line, in my opinion, between social drinking and like I watch my wife still drinks and she's fine. Turns it on and off, has a day, goes days, doesn't matter. I think for those that find it to be a pattern and you're starting every day or every other day and it becomes an escalation, I agree with you. I think it opens a door. And it's not that you might walk through that door, it's that something else is going to walk through the other side of the door. And that's the unpredictability of alcohol, is that you don't know. And to your point, I've said this about alcohol, that I feel lucky to a degree that it was alcohol, because there's a lot of off ramps with drinking. Most go, I think, unheeded, but there's a lot of off ramps in hindsight. Other addictions end going 100 miles per hour against a brick wall, and you don't have those chances to step off. So if I were talking to somebody that's early in the process or may have some warning signs, I think it's important to recognize that early, because by the nature of what the addiction is, you have the grace of getting off that track sooner than something far more dangerous and deadlier, more immediate, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. That the way you just framed that up about the door, that was incredible.
Yeah.
About something else, just life happening, right? Because weird stuff and it happens all the time, every day in people's lives, right? And I think every time we reach for a drink, if we're in that place, and in even with your wife there too, like that is a reality for people. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't sit here
Yeah.
and say that everybody who's drinking, should quit drinking type deal. But
Right.
I
No.
think the more that you see those warning signs and kind of those red flags, and the way I look at it too is, in my life anyway, the way it picked up speed is the more things came into my life, the more I leaned into drinking, the less I leaned
Right.
into things that were healthier, right? So we're
Yes.
celebrating wins at the job, we're connecting with other people. It was down days or tough days or boring
Yep.
days. And then I didn't push myself to do other things that could have been more, productive, that could have helped me out with my confidence and self-esteem and sense of belonging and all of the insecurities that, I had growing up. And then it was just like alcohol. And then most people's story, a lot of people's story ends up sort of in the isolation phase, right? You end up
Yep.
isolating, and then family members or somebody is mentioning, hey, this is a problem. Then things can really go downhill, because then it's the hiding phase. And then I think the
Yep.
guilt, the shame piles on. And it's, it's really fascinating kind of how it plays out, as opposed to when we start, there's no idea of how this is going to
Yeah.
go.
I think it's insidious, right? It starts socially,
Mm-hmm.
and then your body finds that it's medication. It's not healthy medication, but it does its job until it doesn't. And I think a lot of people, at least I identify with your journey, that the brief moment you shared here, that you really are, you always have that choice. And I was in the same boat. I've worked from remotely for a long time pre-COVID, and my drinking got progressively worse, but it would oscillate in that journey, and it always peaked when I was bored. And I look back on that and I say, why wasn't I more productive? Why wasn't I making healthier choices? I could have been doing anything else but sitting there isolated, drinking, feeling ashamed of myself. But that's where the forgiveness comes in, right? You have to forgive that person, because you're not that person anymore, and you can't hold on to that.
Yeah. Let's move into that a little bit here too, kind of back to present day, or in the last 2 years. How did you
Mhm.
work on that? Because that seems to be a big theme to your story and something that you've really focused on.
Yeah, a combination of things. I found the right therapist. I think it's not good enough to say you go to therapy. You got to find the right person. And I have been very, very lucky, but also I did a lot of vetting. I found the right person. And that has helped a lot. Went to see a psychiatrist, got on meds for a while to give myself runway. I had to be able to calm my brain down to be able to work on these things. And I have done a lot of just fundamental things, changed my diet, exercise. But to be honest, the work that I've done in therapy is the most important work. But I also, it's funny because I'm in the medical world, been in and around big pharma for a long time. I have strong opinions about it. But that being said, I needed the medication to give myself that space to work in therapy, and I'm now off meds and feel amazing. But I always I'll encourage people to explore that as an option, as something that is not a permanent solution, but something that can maybe help in a short term, whether that's a year or 2 years or 5 years, whatever that short term looks like for you, to slow things down, to take the pressure off, to balance your body. Because if you've been drinking for as long as at least I have, it changes your entire brain, rewrites neurological pathways, your neuroplasticity changes. I mean, all of these things are affected, and you have to give yourself space and time for all that to recover.
Yeah. It did learning all of that help you as well? Because I find a lot of people now today things are more like out there, right? Of sort of the effects, and it's things seem to be kept oddly quiet for a long time, of the impact of alcohol. And then I feel like people are really feeling empowered by
Yeah,
understanding too about how things changed and why things are happening, and that it is going to take time to heal up. I mean, 6 months to a year, like, might just
Mhm.
be the beginning. I mean, there's different things that suggest different, and it's going to depend on
Yeah.
each person. But did you find knowing sort of that information helpful?
Yeah, I think the more I explored the biological effects of alcohol and the aftermath, the more the more aware I became of my own impulses and decisions and choices. If you know that you want something, you can expect the dopamine hit. And when you feel good, if you know the chemistry that goes into that, it makes it easier to have, I think, that meta conversation, that metacognition of yourself in the moment to say, look, I'm here right now. I'm being tempted. I know what my body's doing, and I have a choice. Do I indulge that dopamine hit and make a really bad decision? Or do I recognize what my body's doing and have a conversation with myself and make a healthier choice? And so for me, particularly, that logical approach of understanding my body's mechanics and its physical interaction with alcohol allowed me to understand why I was doing some of the things I was doing.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think a lot of people, relate to that too, about how things do change and how you just got to maybe, slow down, ask some questions about things, and realize that it's going to take some time, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think initially a lot of people are like, drinking's my problem, right? Because it's causing all of these issues in my life. So it's like, if I quit drinking, and at my last guest too, he hinted towards this, right? As long as I just quit drinking, everything is gonna iron itself out. And I think what that really does is it brings a lot of things to the surface with time, of
Yeah.
everything that we've kind of maybe been avoiding. It could go all the way back to childhood, and for everybody that could be different. And a lot of these things come to the surface. So I love that you've really made the point there of getting the support you needed, possibly some guidance as well in therapy, and
Yep.
really leaning into that resource.
And I think the journey starts when you stop. That things don't get easier. For me, that hard work started when I stopped drinking.
Mm.
That's when I had to confront myself. That's when I had to confront my past. I couldn't hide from it. I couldn't escape it anymore. So for me, the hard work is when you stop drinking, but it's also the most rewarding work. It's the stuff that feeds your soul, that makes you look back on the last 10, 15, 20, whatever years of your life and say, how did I live without this feeling?
Mm. Gratitude play into it at all?
Absolutely. I say my gratitude prayers every day. I am very grateful because it took a lot of the universe, a lot of God, a lot of my friends and family took a lot of things for me to be here. And I'm just very grateful of that. And there was a long selfish period of my life where I didn't recognize how much people had contributed to my happiness.
Yeah, beautiful. Any big takeaways to share with the audience as we head towards wrapping up with these
Yeah.
last 2 years for you, or for anybody who, feels like they're stuck anywhere in their journey, or anybody who's on this journey?
Yeah, I think to harp on it, um, you got to surrender. You just have to stop fighting yourself. If you're telling yourself it's a problem, give in to that. Surrender yourself to that and embrace what that means. What does that do to your journey? I think a lot of people are afraid to stop drinking because they don't know what their life will look like when they stop. And they know what their life looks like right now. And they're telling themselves it's tolerable. I can live like this. I can be here right now. I hate it. I hate myself, but I can do it because I know it. And the fear of the unknown holds, I think, a lot of people back. Who will I be? Who will I become? Who will I discover when I stop drinking? Uh, and I'll just say that that discovery, it is the most beautiful thing that I think we can experience when we truly understand ourselves. And I don't think you come to a point of completion in that journey, but you definitely get to plateaus. And when you start reaching those plateaus, everything is just smells better, tastes better, more colorful. And for me, that if there's hope in this story, it's that when you finally decide to surrender yourself, you're going to come out on the other side, I think, seeing life tremendously more vibrant.
Yeah. And I think there's so much truth to that. Even if what we know is really destroying us, it's what we know, it's what we oddly enough comfortable with, maybe, in a sense, as
Yeah.
opposed to the
Yeah.
unknown is extremely scary. And you kind of listed off a few things there too, of like maybe what we might be afraid of. And something I hear a lot and I can relate to is, what are others going to think too? What are others going to think
Right.
when I share with them, if I do share with them that I had a problem with drinking? I mean, what picture are they going to paint in their head, and how are they going to be? But I feel decently comfortable saying that all of our biggest fears that we have never really come true.
Yeah. No, none of the fears that I had um, amounted to anything in comparison to what I had been through. And so when you're climbing down in the mountain and you look back, it's only when you're looking back do you realize like how far you scaled. And so to flip that, I was in a valley and I didn't realize how far in that valley I was until I climbed out and looked back down, and you realize the hole that you were in. But one thing I just want to say, and to hit it again too, is love. You got to love yourself, and when you learn to love yourself, you can love other people, and you start making decisions that are of care for yourself. You stop drinking, start eating better, start exercising, sleeping, and you just do these fundamental things that show love for yourself. And they set you, I think, on the right path.
Yeah. I think that's scary for a lot of us getting into this, if I reflect back. But it is interesting too, because I think if you asked a lot of people, they might say, they love themselves. But I think if you really dig deeper to it, I mean, do we put a toxic substance in our body time and time again if we love ourselves? Like, I think
Right.
that's a disconnect too. But loving ourselves is definitely, part of the journey we go on too, about, coming home to who we are, and reconnecting with ourselves. And yeah, such a powerful story, Josh. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the time, and hopefully, somebody heard it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
No, I just want to thank you. You're really providing a platform for people, and I find you're doing really great work. Just want to thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh. You too.
Well, I appreciate it. So great show.
Well, there it is, another incredible episode here on the podcast. Huge shout out to Josh. I'll drop his contact information for Instagram down in the show notes below. Send him over a thank you. If there was anything that really helped you out, any insights, any perspectives, or any part of his story you could relate to, send it over and let him know. The guests that come on the podcast always love to hear from you. They love when their story makes a difference or an impact or just resonates with another person. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. It's the holiday season. Come on. Everybody go to Apple and Spotify. Drop a 5-star review. It helps other people who are checking out all the podcasts to maybe consider sober motivation. It would mean the world, and I'll see you on the next one.